Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks so much for being here with us on this Wednesday afternoon in Southern California. Maybe it's a Wednesday evening where you are, maybe even a Wednesday night or even a Thursday morning, depending on where you are around the globe. We're awful glad you decided to spend the time with us, whatever time of day it is where you are. We got a great one for you today. Flannel Panel's back, where we talk about the news of the world from a Catholic perspective. And we are, as always, joined by two very fine men. I have a reason. I'm going to start with Joe today. Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers, occasionally remembers to wear his flannel shirt. Today he did. Welcome, yes. Joe Heschmeyer.
You don't even know how close of a call this was.
It was really? You even got an extra email.
And something in the back of my mind was like, wait a second. I got an email about this. I should wear flannel today. So.
Very good. Also with us, and I saved him for a second today because I wanted to congratulate him. Today is his 10th anniversary as president of Catholic Answers. Yay! Yay! Oh, they're clapping in the booth, but you can't hear it because they have the mic down. Congratulations, Chris Check.
Thank you, Cy.
10 years.
I get a sabbatical now?
Your job is so easy. Come on. What do you need a sabbatical from?
It's the best job in the world because I have...
Second best.
Oh.
After mine. Oh, look, he found is that rain or is that applause? I'm not sure. Oh, that's applause? Okay. A very, very nice thing, John Sorensen, your COO, made a nice...
He did. He was very gracious.
It was beautiful what he said about you today. How's it feel, 10 years president of Catholic Answers?
It's a great gift, Cy. I feel, deeply blessed, unworthy, and as unworthy as I felt 10 years ago.
You're way less unworthy. Is that the right way to say that? I don't know.
But, you might be more aware now.
But more aware of my unworthiness. I'm very, very grateful. I'm grateful for this most magnificent staff, our board of trustees who put their confidence in me.
I got to say,
their best judgment notwithstanding, and for all of our supporters who are so generous to us with their gifts, who keep Catholic Answers running.
I mean, you do a lot of stuff, Chris. You do a lot of stuff, and as I've said many times in public, and happy to say here, I don't think there's very many people who could do the managerial side the way you do, but also not forget the apostolic side of an apostolate. You keep us on track as far as that. You make sure that we're provided for with Mass and the chapel and just the retreats and all that. So and you have a good sense of what's Catholic and what's not Catholic, and you remind us let's do the Catholic part. Let's do the Catholic.
The supernatural comes first. Ever since the incarnation.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked about grace and nature today at our staff meeting. Yeah.
I'm not going to give out the phone number because we're just going to chat here about the news of the day. There's not much news. It is so boring out there. Oh my gosh, nothing is happening anywhere. But actually, I think we're going to start a new.
You sound like you're tired of winning.
I'm so tired of winning. We're going to start a new thing called Flannel Panel. Mailbox, is that what we're going to call it?
Mailbag.
Mailbag. Let's call it mailbag. Yeah,
because it's a box would be too small,
right? To get
considering all how much we're going to get.
We'll start at second hour, but I want to invite you. We have flannelpanel@catholic.com is our new email address where you can write us. Say, I don't know. I'll just pick someone at random. Joe says something idiotic. Then just send us a note, and we'll. Maybe possibly read it on the air. We're going to read these on the air. We have just one today, one item in the Catholic Answers mailbag today. But flannel panel mailbag, at Catholic.com. What did I say?
You said Catholic Answers.
Oh, yeah. No, flannel panel mailbag. All right. Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, is it flannel panel at Catholic.com or flannel panel mailbag at Catholic.com?
It's flannel panel at Catholic.com.
Okay, just making sure.
I probably said the wrong thing.
It was slightly confusing, but that might have been my stupidity.
It's my fault. I was talking over you.
No, it was me. It's like three members of Heckle and Jekyll here.
What's that thing called when you
first.
Talk over someone? Don't you guys have a word for that? Like
interrupting?
Talk over?
Interruption, Cal? There is a name. There is a word for that.
Talk over.
In radio.
Crosstalk. Crosstalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be the name of this show, since
because that's what we do.
It's a Christian show where we also talk over each other.
Oh, what, wow. Joe? Sorry, Edgar. It's no longer called Flannel Panel. We have an email. It's called crosstalk at Catholic.com. Send your emails there. Well, we have gotten some email though from people, and I'm going to start here about this program where people tell us their preferences about what we talk about, and I'll be honest with you, it's not politics. People do not prefer that they prefer we talk about cultural things.
We have
arts,
bad
movies.
politics, in fairness to those people.
That we're not good at politics? Is that what you mean, or?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris is just like, maybe we shouldn't have had an industrial revolution. And I'm like, I don't know how you pass that as a bill.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. And I'm always like, but the Middle Ages was awesome. Okay, so we're probably not great political commentators. By the way, why do they say commentator and not commenter? I have never understood that. Do we need the word commentator? It seems to me like the word
sounds more
utilize.
permanent.
When I was in the Marine Corps, the sergeant instructors at Officer Candidate School would say, orientate your map. And
Why not just orient your map?
Exactly. And, and so here I am, a college student.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Excuse me, Sergeant Major.
Yes.
I haven't done enough push-ups today.
It's orient your map. Orientate your map, candidates.
Why commentator? It's to me, it's like when a person says it's a win-win for everybody. No, it's not a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win. That's enough. You don't need to say more than that.
Well, in this situation, there's 3 of us, so you could have a win-win-lose.
Well, that's true.
But that would
as
be,
I just did.
Yeah.
All right. All right. But that's what I say that for this reason. I realize that the political news is out of control. There's so much, but we're just not. We're going to talk about things that are on a different level than that. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift. We're going to talk about AI. The Vatican has a new thing. We're going to talk about.
She's going to the Super Bowl. I just wanted to make everybody mad.
AI. Oh,
Taylor Swift.
Oh,
I mean, maybe AI. I like that I say she's going to the
Another
Super Bowl
thing
and
that
you
our-
ask AI?
Another thing that our listeners are really tired of is Joe talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. We get a lot of emails about that.
Speaking of tired of winning.
Please. All right. I'll tell you what. I do want to talk. We'll get to the mailbag second hour. I want to talk about AI, but I would like to read you a headline from the New York Times. I don't have anything from National Public Radio today. You guys know how much I love National Public Radio, but
The New York Times is kind of NPR in print.
it is.
I mean,
it's just NPR,
assuming it's
right.
still in print, which it might be a generous assumption.
I think they print like 6 copies up still of the New York Times. But I
the
remember
paper
a
of
few years
record.
ago, somebody was like saying they were shocked at who won Person of the Year on Time Magazine. The other person was like, there's still a Time Magazine? That's the shock. But there is still a New York Times. But I want to read a headline for it and just ask you two a simple question. And I'll ask the listener as well. Do you notice anything interesting about this headline? A recent headline from the New York Times. Do you notice anything interesting about this headline? Undocumented women ask, will my unborn child be a citizen?
Can I offer 2 things that are kind of striking about that headline?
Yes, you can. Anything
One,
interesting? Yeah.
of course, the sudden realization that the unborn are humans.
The
They're
unborn
children.
is a child, according to the New York Times.
Yes. When you want them, we recognize their biology.
Right.
But second, the realization that birthing people are women.
I love
also-
that they admitted that women are the carriers of children, not just birthing people or whatever. Yeah, this is like the most old-fashioned headline. And I love it that the only reason that they are resorting to these words is because they want to shame the people who use these words about their immigration policy. Nonetheless, I really was so happy to see the word woman.
Yeah.
And the word unborn child in the New York Times.
I think this is going to help their circulation.
Do you think so?
No, I don't.
I think that seems very optimistic. Yes, thank you, New York Times. Thank you very much.
Stop clock, right?
For that.
Stop clock. That's right.
Stop clock is right,
Right
twice a
twice.
day. I'll tell you what, we'll come back and we'll do that other. I have another New York Times article in which I will take the side of the New York Times. Can you believe that? That's going to happen right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment. Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
That retreat absolutely lit me on fire. Your talks and the spiritual counseling, I just want to learn so much about it. And as a parent of 3 boys, what can I research to continue that fire, to impart that on my boys?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Now president of Catholic Answers, Joe Heschmeyer. Among the brilliant moves that Chris Check has made, bring Joe Heschmeyer to Catholic Answers. Nice work on that, Chris. Congratulations.
I had a heavy assist from John Sorensen.
Oh, did John? Did he know about
He did.
Joe before you?
He did.
So Joe Heschmeyer, also here, and me, your host, Cy Kellett. And I said I would take the side of the New York Times, and now I would like to take the side of the New York Times. The New York Times is suing OpenAI, and it's for copyright infringement. Because apparently, if I understand, now, Joe, you're a lawyer, and Chris, you run...
I'm not a copyright lawyer. I'm not a practicing lawyer. Getting all the legal disclaimers out of the way right now.
All right. Very good. Not even a
sued
good
over
lawyer,
this.
dog nugget. This is, I'm going to say it in layman's terms, which actually are the only terms I know. So that's why I'm going to say it in layman's terms. But this is what's happening. OpenAI invented a giant computer that reads everything on the internet and then gives it back to you in slightly altered form. Therefore, it's taking the New York Times, all of their work product, and essentially using it without accreditation to the New York Times. In some
in fairness, there's like an entire political party that does that with the New York Times.
Joe, so far you're winning Flannel Panel. Are we keeping score today on Flannel Panel? Joe's winning Flannel Panel. I agree with the New York Times on this. This idea that you could just take people's work product and you say, oh, fair use. Well, fair use doesn't mean you can use every word that's been printed in the New York Times for the last 150 years and just do whatever you want with it. That's not fair use.
Yeah, so this came up, John Sorensen and I attended a conference on AI
Oh, at the Vatican.
at the Holy See in October,
Yeah.
and in one of the breaks, we were having a conversation with a gentleman, an Eastern Rite Catholic with a very long beard, whose name is escaping me right now. I feel awful because he's very bright.
Was it Santa?
No.
Okay.
But he worked full time for Microsoft, and one of the things he explained a couple of things to me, which this is a world that I find utterly bewildering. Who's the real owner of OpenAI? Is it Google or Microsoft or something? Or
Microsoft owns has a big chunk of it, but it's like a nonprofit that was established by the big boys.
In any case, this has been their modus operandi. Now, I don't know the details of the New York Times one specifically, and we could get our friend Steve Barley in here to talk about intellectual property, but they've just decided they're going to take information from wherever they can get it, in the main, without asking.
Yeah.
And if they have to pay a suit, they're just going to do it. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the fullness of it. The difficulty that they're running into right now is they're running out of things to take. There are machines right now that are doing nothing all day but scanning pages in ancient, European monasteries,
Right.
because they're just running out of information to collect. And then it's like that mythical creature that eats its tail, the name of which I forget.
This is the most fascinating.
Yeah, they are. What they're actually doing is creating AI machines now, computers.
Is it the basilisk?
It may be.
I don't know.
We'll look it up.
No, that's the one where it touches you, it dies.
Anyway, it's the one.
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros, there it is.
The one that eats its own tail. And I can't take credit for that metaphor. It was this very bright Eastern Rite Catholic from Microsoft who was explaining it to me. He said, now what they're doing is they are creating AI computers or programming AI computers, by the way, that use massive amounts of energy to create content. So to create content, which then AI will use. So AI is generating content.
More information for AI.
Let me give you
AI
some concrete examples that might illustrate this.
Yeah.
On Facebook right now, and this is true, I think, across social media platforms, you'll find people sharing these photos, and it'll be like an elderly woman holding up a sign saying it's my birthday, or someone saying like, I'm a disabled vet, won't someone like and share this post? And it's completely AI generated. There is no human being there. And if these work, then the machine learns, okay, this kind of stuff gets shares, this gets likes, and because the social media platforms are treating them as if it's a person creating all this stuff, you can actually make some money off of doing this. But then the AI models are learning not from looking at real pictures of human beings, what a human being looks like,
right,
but by looking at the weird, almost human AI caricatures, and then it becomes further and further from a human being.
Yeah.
And so you start to get these really insane, they look like fever dreams, because it's an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation. And so imagine like an extremely fast game of technological telephone where it just becomes like these weird, like you can see like, oh, there's a face, and like the hands have way too many fingers, and it doesn't really look that human, because a human was so distantly in the past in terms of the creation of this thing. It's fascinating.
So on Tuesday or Monday, depending on which hemisphere you were in, the Holy See released a letter or a document on artificial intelligence. It's called Old,
Ancient and New.
Ancient and New. And the DDF, and then I think the Dicastery for Culture and Education, jointly. I think I know the guy who penned part of this anyway. He was at our conference, but I'm not positive. Because it resonates with some of the things that he was saying. But they do, in fact, take this up. In fact, I think this is probably the very first Vatican document that's ever used the expression deep fake.
There's got to be a first time. Yeah. There's got to be a first time.
But they do take up this question of AI's capacity to get further and further away from reality. What is the truth, because of the way it collapses on itself.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's fascinating. But I wonder if you two, both of you I know, have thought about the church's teaching on work and the value of work and the dignity of work. So certainly the Vatican document is about the human intellect being so much more than what an AI can do, and as this embodied, ensouled intellect that's made for socializing. It's not just made for thinking stuff up. It's made for but it's a very good document in that regard.
I highly recommend it. It's about 117 paragraphs. It will not take you long to read.
No, and it's a very good little primer on the nature of the human intellect, and gathers up a good bit of what the church teaches. But I want to focus on work for a minute, on the church's teaching on work.
Which this document does.
Can you just take other people's work? And that, I don't like the work that the New York Times produces. The New York Times is, to me, if they have that thing where it's like, oh, get 6 months for 99 cents, I'm like, that seems like 99 cents too much. But that doesn't mean you can just steal their work.
This is something I think we don't appreciate. So if I had a website where I just took articles from the New York Times and put them up on my own website, you would pretty clearly recognize this as theft. Not just plagiarism, but I'm actually taking this thing they're trying to sell you and stealing it and giving it away for free. And so what unfortunately is the case right now is you have two things. You have AI, and then you have this closely related things where it's basically an AI summary. where OpenAI, but also Google and every major tech player will try to take money that previously they'd had to give out to New York Times and other websites for click-through. And so, you think about it in terms of advertising dollars. 15 years ago, there was an explosion of news on the internet because newspapers, blogs, etc., were financially sustainable. You could have little banner ads, you could have sidebar ads, and this was enough money. Google really aggressively pushed everybody else out of that, not just other search engines, but also everyone they're taking content or directing content to. So one
It's
of
like a
the
Standard
most famous
Oil
examples,
type thing.
Yeah.
say that, yeah,
Like Rockefeller and
Sure,
Flagler did
sure.
with Standard Oil.
right. I mean, it's what's sometimes
On
called
crack.
a vertical monopoly,
Yeah,
yeah,
where you
yeah.
control everything from soup to nuts.
Yeah.
But in this case, because it's not a clearly defined space, they kind of got away with it. So, a really kind of classic example of this was, what time is the Super Bowl? And I'm not just bringing this up to rub other people's faces in it, but that's actually what the question was.
Really? Was it, Joe?
A bunch of
Really?
news websites realized they could get a free click by just having an article where they said what time the Super Bowl was. Now, this is not journalism at its finest, but it was bringing revenue to news sites and blogs and everything else. And then Google realized this and was like, when people search that, we'll just put the answer right there, so they never leave Google and they just keep Googling other things.
Right.
And so they just cut off that flow. And so imagine that now for every topic under the sun, where you type in what is the main thesis of this document, and it'll do a little AI summary at the top, and then it'll have footnotes. So if you wanted to go read the 30 things to come to the synthesis, you could, but you're not going to. And so, that's 30 people that didn't get your click, didn't get you reading their work product, and all of that human time and effort just went into like 1/30th of an auto-generated answer that the person got paid nothing for. And then the other thing is, like, once you do this enough, eventually newspapers can't exist. And people creating content, especially content that takes research and money, aren't going to provide it. So then you have another version of this Ouroboros where, okay, well, if you can't cite to, factual, well-researched documentation, what are you going to get? You're going to get blogs, you're going to get other AI-generated things, you're going to get things that are of a lower kind of standard and quality, or it's just going to make answers up. And we've got plenty of examples of AI just simply inventing answers to questions it doesn't know the answer to. So it's making the whole information economy, as they call it, much worse, both from the perspective of the workers, but also from the perspective of people who want to know things.
And by the way, contrary to the promises of the internet, and we could just say the internet is the next expression, or AI is the next expression of the internet, and in fact it is. But contrary to the promises, the false promises of the internet, this is not a broad dissemination of information. It's a lot of information, some of it correct, some of it false, in the control of a very, very small number of people. And in fact, the Holy See document addresses that, and the passages that do resonate very much. Immediately what I thought of was C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, and how technology is used in the main by the few to control the many. He talks about the airplane, the wireless radio, and the contraceptive pill. But I mean, Lewis would be staggered by what was going on right now.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's an enslavement.
I wonder if the New York Times has any chance with this, though, because
it almost doesn't matter. Even if they win the suit and they get a settlement, it will not stop what's going on.
But yeah, I mean, already,
yeah,
China has just released a cheaper, seemingly more efficient version of basically what OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT.
Right.
The funniest take I've seen on this so far is, one thing we hadn't predicted for 2025 was a chatbot losing its job to a robot.
Whoops! Didn't see that coming. Yeah, and I have to say, I'll be quite honest about the deep seek thing from China. Look, if you want to trust evil communist dictators, put your information in there. Go for it.
Yep.
But you're an idiot if you think that that's what it says it is. I mean, really, we just miraculously came up with something cheaper and better than the Americans have. All you have to do is just give us all your keystrokes and information, and you can have it. Like, really, it seems to be naive. But that's not what that is.
Yeah, it's the mess of pottage, right? Well, there's one more thing, Cy, in this document I would encourage people to go to, and that is the effect of all of this on human relationships, and it's in paragraph 48.
Okay.
No, it's paragraph 58, and I printed it, or maybe I didn't. And anyway, it's not in front of me. But I'm going to paraphrase.
I can read it for you if you want.
Well,
Paragraph
I mentioned,
58?
I think it's paragraph 58. But
It is in this context that one can consider the challenges AI poses to human relationships. Like other technological tools, AI has the potential to foster connections within the human family. However, it could also hinder a true encounter with reality and ultimately lead people to a deep and melancholic dissatisfaction with interpersonal relations and a harmful sense of isolation. Authentic human relationships require the richness of being with others in their pain, their pleas, and their joy. Since human intelligence is expressed and enriched also in interpersonal and embodied ways, authentic and spontaneous encounters with others are indispensable for engaging with reality in its fullness.
yeah,
Let's talk about
spontaneous encounters.
Let's talk about it when we come back. We're talking about AI from a Catholic perspective, we hope, on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
From its earliest days, Catholic faith has been lived by a yearly cycle of feasts and seasons. The new book from Mike Aquilina and Adam Lucas, Feasts of Our Fathers, is a one-stop companion for praying and meditating through the holy days and seasons of the Church with help from the most ancient Christian people. Don't just read about the early saints, pray with them. Order your copy of Feasts of Our Fathers now at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's a Flannel Panel Wednesday here on Catholic Answers Live, where we put on flannel shirts and we talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, 10 years now. Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers. I don't know, it's probably been like 8 months. How long have you been here, Joe?
3, 4.
3 months? 3 or 4 months?
3.
I just had my 4-year anniversary, I believe.
4-year anniversary. Holy smokes. You must
I know,
be fun
it's been
because
crazy.
that time flew.
Wait, no. Your anniversary's on St. Joseph's Day.
Oh, no, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking. But
Do you know when you started work here, Joe?
No.
I do. I'll never forget when I started work
The end
here.
of March 2021.
I can't ever forget because I started the same day Donald Trump started. That's how I know I'm started. Yeah, that's right. On the day of his first inauguration, I started. So I always have a good reference point of how long I've been here. That's not interesting at all. I'm just so happy I shared it. It's not
holding back so many potential political jokes, and I just thought.
Oh, good for you, Joe! You held yourself back.
People asked us not to do politics. I'm respecting
let's not
that.
do politics. No, let's not do politics. But AI, okay, we were in the midst of discussing AI. You read chapter 58 from the Vatican's new document, Ancient and New, which I could tell you in Latin is Antiqua et Nova. And
Yes,
Chris,
the other half
good
is borrowed
Latin.
in blue.
The other half what?
It's something borrowed and something blue, I believe.
Something.
That's the next one is going to be something borrowed,
Yes,
something blue.
exactly.
That's the follow-up.
That's the blueness is about the deep and melancholic dissatisfaction they're talking about.
But you wanted to say something about the consequences of AI on human relationships.
At the end of that, that excellent treatment of the nature of human relationships, it talks about how spontaneity is necessary. How does the sentence go, Joe?
At the end of that
At the
paragraph,
end,
Joe.
yeah. The last,
Since human intelligence is expressed and enriched also in interpersonal and embodied ways, authentic and spontaneous encounters with others are indispensable for engaging with reality in its fullness.
yeah, I just think about how increasingly, and this moves a little further afield from AI, but just the world of Zoom and things of this nature, how increasingly many of our encounters are scheduled or planned.
Oh, isn't that the case? Yes.
So, well, I mean, Joe's in Kansas City, so he and I are going to have a meeting, and there's 6 things that we're going to discuss, and maybe there will be a little bit of spontaneity to it, but it's constrained by the fact that he's there, I'm here, it was scheduled,
right.
There was a purpose for it.
Whereas you
I'm
and
not
I were in
moving.
the same building.
Yeah, and
if I don't hear you come in, then
You have no choice. You have no chance.
Then you just come into my
You
office
get
and
trapped
sit down.
in your
Like,
office
sometimes if
for
I hear you coming, we don't get that
an
spontaneity.
hour of spontaneity.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And now here's where you say how rewarding that is.
It is actually very rewarding. It is. Yeah. But that whole section of this document, where the Vatican is just trying to remind, I love being Catholic, but they're just trying to remind us of the great complexity and variety of aspects there are to being a human. And so this idea of even using the phrase artificial intelligence, what they're saying is intelligence in the machine sense is not the same thing.
It says it's not intelligence.
It's not. It's not like it's a difference of degree. It's a difference of kind. It's not the same thing that humans do.
Like when you're putting 2 numbers together in your head, what's going on in your mind is different than what's going on in the calculator. And likewise, but at a much more complex level, which isn't easy to envision, what AI is doing is basically what's happening with autocomplete on your phone, where it tries to guess what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
It's a more sophisticated version of that, but it's that kind of automated, non-random construction. And it's only because people have a really reductive vision of the human soul and of the human person that they can conflate that with sentience. I mean, they are. Yeah. If you want a good thought experiment on this, the famous one is the Chinese room experiment. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, where 2 people are on opposite sides of the computer in the middle.
Well, so you've got there's no actual computer. One person's inside a room.
Okay.
And you slide a note in Chinese under the door, and the guy inside the room doesn't speak Chinese at all, but has a book that tells him if they say this, you say that. So he writes out a response he doesn't know what it means in Chinese, and he slides it back to you. And if the book is good enough, it can tell you exactly what to say and do, and you'll always have the right answer, even though you don't have any idea what it is you're doing. I mean, if you want a good example of this,
I see. Right.
you can look like a chess master if you just let the other person go first and then put their moves into another computer and then do what the computer tells you to do. And so you're doing all of the moves of a chess master,
right?
But you don't have any of the interior understanding of why you went there and not there.
Or
self-awareness.
AI doesn't have any self-awareness.
Nor can it ever.
Right.
It can't ever.
Correct.
But here's the thing, though, what it can do that I think is really truly terrifying is an act of imitation that we cannot defeat. That is, the human being, we're very limited. And so we use a limited number of sensory inputs to calculate, am I talking to someone who's intelligent or am I not? Is this thing alive? Is this thing dead? It's only a very small number of sensory inputs that go into our making that calculation. And certainly we're constantly revising and making new judgments and testing and all of that. But these computers will be able to overcome all of those tests. And
at instant speed.
Right.
Instantaneously.
So for example, I go to a car dealer and the person that I meet is an android who's the most skilled salesperson ever. And like has every possible technique and knows every way of manipulating a human being. I'm kind of hopeless against that. I mean, we already see, I'll just tell you, a person who is very intelligent that I know got a text, and the text said, you know how you go through the toll roads here in California? You need to pay your toll road bill. Just hit this button. Oof. All right, well, a human being can't be suspicious at every moment. We can't live that way. So you click the button, and of course, it takes you to a false website where if you put any information in, they will steal everything or as much as they can get. So that's just a text message. Think of when it is a convincing simulacrum. Anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody want to comment on my vocabulary? A convincing.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. I wanted you to be impressed. A convincing simulacrum of a human being. We're going to fall in love with it. We're going to marry it. We're going to give it rights. We're going to do all of that because we're dumb. We're just not able to resist those kinds of things.
It sounds to me like that law that Joe mentioned at the start of the hour about outlawing the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, you think that was a good idea?
Very good idea. I'm all in favor. Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Can we hire that car salesman to raise money for Catholic Answers?
Well, we're currently all of our budget is going into developing the new Catholic Answers coin that we're going to be selling. Have you noticed this? Everybody's getting rich selling coins. Why do we not have a Catholic Answers coin? It's time for Catholic Answers.
Flagrantly immoral to
what are you talking about?
May I say one more thing about the Vatican document?
Yeah.
Especially the section on warfare.
Oh gosh, yes, please do.
Well, it's hard to imagine warfare being more indiscriminate and more lethal than it is today, even though we're told weapons are not indiscriminate. But the document says that, in fact, calls for the outright banning of certain uses of AI in warfare because the victims are going to be, well, like they are right now, more children, more women. More non-combatants.
Right. And again, here is a thing that can be made so powerful that really it's worse than a nuclear bomb in some ways, and that at least a nuclear bomb is local. This thing can spread globally very, very quickly.
You know, when Hannibal defeats the Romans at...
he cheated. At Cannae? Is that what you
said? That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
He didn't cheat.
He used elephants.
No.
That's against the rules.
No. Sorry. By the time he gets down to Cannae, he has no elephants.
There's no elephants.
The elephants are already gone. All right.
No, I admit, Hannibal was a genius. I didn't mean to disparage Hannibal.
And I don't mean to get too far afield. But there is and this is going to sound very odd, but bear with me, there's a humanity to warfare when you're driving your short sword into somebody's abdomen.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're there and you're slipping on his guts and you're smelling what it's like when an alimentary canal is opened up or whatever it is. But the utter dehumanizing...
Things you didn't expect to hear on your drive home.
Right.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
The utter dehumanizing of warfare.
Right, just mechanizing it and programming it and all that.
I'm in Boulder, Colorado, or I don't know why I chose Boulder there, but
fascinated by that as well.
Killing people that I've never seen and have no gripe with.
Yeah, but on the
in
other
the
hand,
Middle East.
On the other hand, say I'm a parent and my kid gets kidnapped. I want all the robots hunting for my kid and eliminating whoever might get in the way.
And do you know,
do you see what I'm saying? Like there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the double-edged sword to all of this.
Right.
The problem is all this stuff that was supposed to make warfare safer and cleaner also makes it more acceptable.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
when it is the brutal kind of hand-to-hand combat,
because you're not seeing
you're
it.
less likely to do it.
Yep.
When it's some guy sitting in an office somewhere pushing a button, and a drone is taking out, hopefully, the enemy, maybe a wedding party.
Yep.
That's much easier to accept. And, you know, I mean, look at the number of cases of drone operators with PTSD, because there's still a human being, even though it's on screen. As you get that where there's not even a human in a room, and it's just a heartless robot that can't even be traumatized, that is ominous. It certainly seems like there will be some advantages with that, but the disadvantages are massive, and we haven't really talked about them yet.
All right, so takeaways on the Vatican document on AI. First of all, I do think you both kind of agreed that whatever happens with the New York Times, it's not going to make a difference. These machines are going to continue to steal the labor of reporters and researchers and scientists. It's all going to be stolen.
There are certain things that you could do at a legislative level. So you can do things like outlawing this practice or requiring the sharing of commissions. So however you structure that, right? And that creates a whole other beast. But for instance, one of the things, I believe it was Australia, maybe Canada as well, did was Facebook was in trouble for the way they were handling news links. And I think that was more people worried about like misinformation. But it meant that if you were in Canada, you couldn't click links to news articles. So you can actually regulate some of this stuff at the search engine and social media levels. It doesn't completely get rid of the problem, but it would at least mitigate some of the damage being done, because I don't think people realize how close we are to another huge, really a collapse. I mean, think about what's happened to newspapers. If like downtown Kansas City, there's this enormous, I want to say $25 million beautiful glass building that the Kansas City Star built around 25 years ago, maybe not even that long, because they were so excited for how much they were growing by leaps and bounds, and it sits empty now. And I mean, the news industry was not ready for how quickly they were just wiped off the map. Like, New York Times is one of a handful of economically successful outlets right now, but there's no promise that they're going to be forever, particularly when you have things like AI that you literally cannot compete against that. When it can, in a couple seconds, summarize 1,000 different points of data,
right?
No expert in the world works that quickly, and it's just impossible. No researcher can compile data on anywhere near that scale. So if there aren't real mechanisms put in to stop us from taking the shortcuts, the consequence will be that the people who gather news no longer have any way of making that economically profitable, and everyone suffers as a result.
By the way, those mechanisms are possible. There are things that government can do. I mean, quite apart from AI, government could shut pornography off right now if it wanted to.
Well, I think, I don't want to get too political, but I do think it's wonderful that that governments are so separate from industry, and that politicians don't rely on industry for all of their funding, so that they're completely independent and make fair laws.
I sense some Muscov irony.
Were you like, where's he going with this?
What is he talking about?
I mean, obvious. Pornography is absolutely devastating the children of America. There's not a politician in America that will stand up and say, stop it. There's not one. I don't care what party you're talking about. There's not one politician who'll say, this is wrong. We cannot have a society that will continue to function if children are deeply sexually wounded at 8 years old on a regular basis by billionaires living in San Francisco. That has to stop. Who? Name me the politician that's standing up and saying it.
I mean, you've got some stuff working against child pornography, or, the exposure. So you have like age verification stuff. Texas, I think Kansas, I don't know what other states have moved to at least have stricter age verification things as a restriction. But honestly, anything short of completely outlawing
shut it off.
You aren't going to, I mean, age verification is a nice kind of doable political goal in the near term, but it's not a solution in the long run to the problem.
We fretted about the Chinese virus. This is the real virus that could very easily be shut off.
Yeah, it would require the word no, however, and we are just simply not willing to say no to adults for the good of children. Now, we stopped, around 1972.
Not even just the good of children, the good of adults, too.
Human persons.
Well, that's a good point. Yep. That's a very good point. Thank you. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'll give you a choice. We can talk about taxes or Taylor Swift. Right back after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live. The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I pray that EWTN News in Depth will help the everyday life of everyday Catholics by bringing them the news that matters to them and helping them to have the information at their fingertips for whatever it is that they need to be able to engage with the world confidently with their faith.
EWTN News in Depth with Montse Alvarado. Friday night, 8 Eastern on EWTN Television and Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check, Joe Heschmeyer, our guests. I am Cy Kellett, your host. It's Flannel Panel today, where we talk about the news of the day, except for the political news, from a Catholic perspective. Also, I think the other thing people don't like about it is when we talk about insider church stuff. So we're not going to do that anymore. Insider church stuff and politics, we're just not going to do that anymore.
How are they going to learn all this? No,
how are they going to learn all the gossip if we don't do the insider
exactly.
church stuff? 88. No, I almost gave out the phone number. I apologize. This is not a phone number day. All right, you guys have a choice: Taylor Swift or taxes. We're going to talk about them both, but which one do you want to do next?
Death, taxes, and Taylor Swift.
The three things that cannot be avoided. Is that...
Yes. Well, let's talk about Taylor Swift.
Chris?
Yeah, sure. But I do want to. We will do the taxes one.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about the child tax credit, and that's like I know Chris definitely wants to talk about that. As long as we don't go too long with Taylor Swift. Tell me, I'm so sorry, Chris. You're going to have to remind me of the author's name.
I need to hear. Wait a second. I think Chris was about to sing some Taylor
Swift.
I
gave the one.
Make sure.
She's on the cheer team. I'm in the bleachers. Something.
I like you're singing it from the man's
sounds
perspective.
Like a good song.
This is a good kind of
I'm
reversal.
Wearing sneakers.
Jordan, do you want to come in and sing it for us?
Yeah.
Jordan? No, a former Taylor Swift fan there.
Patricia Snow.
Oh, yes.
Patricia
in First
Snow
Things.
is, I think, at the very top of the regular contributors to First Things magazine.
If you judge by this article, she's the top.
Everything she writes is insightful and brilliant.
And pithy, too. She's a good writer. I love somebody who can write and not just pretend to be a good writer, but to actually be a good writer.
Her prose is superb. She is Ross Doutwaite. How do you say it? Douthat. I'm sorry. I should learn how to say that.
Sound it out. Did they not teach you that in school?
Yeah, whole language or phonics or what was it? Yeah, she's his mom. She's Ross Douthat's mom.
Well, that makes me feel better because I read Ross Douthat and I think I could never write like that. And now
he had his mom.
Okay, so if you get a mom,
I learned to write from my mom.
That's like if your mom was Hemingway.
That feels like a very ungenerous thing to say to your mom. I like that you just went on the air and you're like, I know my problem's origins. My mother failed me.
Joe, I would appreciate it if you would stop pointing to the logic of the things I say. I would like to just for them to hang out there. Without
Ross.
anyone.
I like Ross. He's wrong on the integralists, but
is he?
Yeah, he is.
Okay,
but,
we'll do that sometime. We'll talk about
100%.
integralism.
We should have him on. He likes fighting this, and you like fighting this, Chris. You guys should fight on the air.
Let's have him and on the
Jacob
other side.
Imam.
We could do Jacob Imam. We could do
Mark Barnes.
Yeah, but Scott
Hahn.
Hahn.
Sounding kind of stacked.
Oh.
So, Rob?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're stacking the whole side against
not so
poor
Rob.
Ross, and he'll still
no, not so Rob.
No, he's very good at tweeting. But let's
okay.
All right.
I'm just gonna say this. One of the most important essays in 2024 for understanding the culture
is this
essay, and it's called Taylor Swift and the Sexual Revolution. And I read it because she came up in our last Flannel panel, and then I think my brother
Taylor Swift, you mean?
Yes,
came up. Yeah, we talked.
I think my brother shot this to me, and
right.
I was dismissive of Taylor Swift generally, although I think she does have talent as a songwriter, and she's written a lot of her songs, and I kind of think it's charming how she just basically told the whole record label industry to pack sand, but But I was generally unsympathetic to her until I read this article. And I highly recommend it. I'm going to just give it in a couple of sentences.
Okay.
Much of her music expresses her own personal angst and really gives voice to the angst of her fans, the Swifties, who are in the main girls who have been ill-used by the world.
Because I do think. Oh, do you want to say more?
Well, they've been ill-used by the world. And Taylor and her followers recognize that they have been. But they are still looking for this thing that they're not going to be ill-used by. But and then here's where they go wrong. They're looking in the wrong place. That's a clumsy summary of a brilliant and insightful.
Well, I think it's not just that they're looking in the wrong place. It's that they're refusing to see part of what the meaning of the sexual revolution is. Because if they really admit the cause of my hurt is this thing I have told empowers me,
right,
then they would have to.
Right.
Well, then I think, like we all do, that it would just hurt too much to admit you've been taken, that you've been wrong.
Yeah, no, my hope for Taylor Swift is this gentleman marries her and that she's able to have lots of children.
He has a pretty good job right now. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well,
I knew it.
And she's a billionaire. So, I think there's a lot that it's expressing because there's a reason. Like, okay, let me just step back and say this. The Dominicans are founded in no small part because St. Dominic, traveling through southern France, starts to understand why the Albigensian heresy is so popular. You don't need to know all the ins and outs of the Albigensian heresy.
Yeah, okay. So, why was the Albigensian heresy so popular? Because it was very anti-sexual.
Because the people preaching it lived radical lives of poverty, and they were better preachers than the Catholic priests.
Yeah.
And so people were more willing to listen to them, even though they were preaching these stupid heretical doctrines that were obviously false. And so he founds a mendicant order of preachers. It's like, okay, well, this is an unmet spiritual need. Let's go meet it. And so when you're looking at the success of an artist, you should be asking, like, why are they successful? And sometimes the answer to that is something really superficial. People want to dance to it. They just want to have, like, something rhythmic. But with Taylor Swift, it's not the appeal of most of her music. Her music isn't principally dance music. It's very lyrically driven. And so we should be asking, like, what is it in these lyrics that tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are responding to and saying, I will give my hard-earned money to buy her music, to go to her shows, etc., because she is selling something. And it is, in one sense, in something like an encounter with herself. Like, there's a lot of parasocial relationships where the number of people I've heard say they feel like they know her. Like, the revelatory nature of her music makes people feel connected. Yeah. So that's pointing to something we talked about before. In an age where we feel disconnected, feeling connected to somebody because they're opening up to you, even if they're opening up to billions of people all at the same time, feels like something authentically human we've been missing and we're hungry for.
Sure, yeah.
But also, the stuff she's opening up about, I think, is tremendously relatable.
It resonates.
Like, hey, it resonates. Yeah. I'm with this guy, and I like him, but he's not willing to marry me.
Yeah.
And so we should be saying, okay, if all of this is hitting home, if this is like speaking to so many women and plenty of men, what can we do with that?
Right.
And I think what we can do with that in part is to diagnose what the problem is. Like, well, why won't he? What's he getting out of this relationship right now where he feels fine just where he is and doesn't feel the need to actually step up and make an honest woman out of you? All of that stuff, you can have a meaningful conversation. It might be a hard one, it might be an uncomfortable one, but at least, like, rather than just having a condemnatory attitude, have a curious attitude and see if you can't get a little further with that.
But I have to say, I had the insight, or it struck me maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that the most important intellectual group of intellectuals in the world is Catholic women intellectuals. The things that they're saying are the things, and so you've got the Helen Alvarez, the Carrie Gresses, who's our friend down in Australia there?
Monica Dimit.
Monica Dimit.
She's great.
Brilliant woman after brilliant woman who is deeply Catholic and able to articulate what's wrong with culture. Because as I think this article, Patricia Snow's article, is pointing out, is that women are better at diagnosing culture than men.
Well, and in the case of Patricia Snow, she's quite candid. She lived all this era.
But that's a very good point. Okay, let's talk more about Taylor Swift and the sexual revolution when we get back. We got to take a very quick break. But what my point was going to be, Joe, and then we'll follow up on it, is you're saying, listen, I believe these women have listened. How are we going to get a broad audience to listen to these women?
Well,
How
let's
are we
not call them broads.
Oh, now, come on.
That's fine. Female audience.
Don't we have that 7-second
He
delay
always
thing?
has to go
What's
too
the-
far.
what's
He
the
always
dump button.
All right, we'll talk about Catholic broads. No, that's not what we're talking about. We'll talk about Taylor Swift and the sexual revolution a little bit more when we come back with Joe Heschmeyer and Chris Check on Catholic Answers Live.
That's going to fill it.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. My guest is Chris Check. Joe Heschmeyer no longer works here. There was a small incident. We had to let him go. I'm just kidding you, Joe. A little bit of broad humor sometimes is acceptable, I think. I mean, we're Catholics. We're not Puritans.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
Very broad-minded of you.
Thank you. We were talking about Taylor Swift and the sexual revolution when we went to the break, but it comes about because all three of us read an absolutely brilliant and wonderfully written article by Patricia Snow in First Things, came out in October. And Chris said, let's talk about this on the Flannel panel. And because we've talked about Taylor Swift before. Oh, and I forgot to bring the mailbag in here. Dog nugget. Do you have it on your computer, that letter?
I can probably dig it up.
If you could, yeah, because I promised we'd do mailbag.
But
we talked about Taylor Swift before,
and
I think there's something particularly. It's almost a do-it-yourself comedy. It's ready-made comedy. Three older gents talking about Taylor Swift, but there is something.
I'm technically still in my 30s for another 2 months. I want to just point that out.
Are you older than Taylor Swift, or are you her age? I don't know how old she is.
We were born in the same year.
You were?
Oh, no, that's not right.
Well, you've done well too, Joe. Don't worry about it. You've done well too.
I was born in 85.
So here's the thing. I think at the root of what Patricia Snow is pointing to in her First Things article, Taylor Swift's sexual revolution, is that at the root of Taylor Swift's engagement with her female fans, $2 billion worth of whom came out to, or they spent $2 billion to come out and see her during that big Eras tour. At the root of it is hurt and a need to express hurt and rage over the failure of relationships with men, and that I think if I understand Patricia Snow correctly, what she's saying is Taylor Swift is like one step away from making the connection that she needs to make, or that women of the post-sexual revolution era need to make, which is the problem is not me. The problem is this is not how we're supposed to live. This sexual revolution as liberation idea is a stupid idea, and it hurt me. And I need to let go of that idea if I want a fully human life.
Yeah, the article made me more sympathetic to Miss Swift and her fans than I was. Can I just give a quick sample here of Patricia Snow's prose? Because she is a master, and she says exactly what you said there. This, in a nutshell, is the dynamic driving Swift's Eras tour. Consensus-seeking young women, young womanhood, coalescing around another young woman's truth-telling. The concerts are vast exercises in collective remembering and purging tumultuous occasions of female catharsis as all those pent-up, prescribed emotions, petulance and rage, disabling anguish and persistent desire, sweep the amphitheater where Swift performs in a spectacle of passionate solidarity, ratified by the ubiquitous talisman of the friendship bracelet.
Yeah, that's Patricia Snow. Nice work. But my point was, and I mentioned some women, and there was more that I would have. I wish I had mentioned Angela Franks, because she's a great theologian who writes on these very topics. But lots of Catholic women, it seems to me, when you encounter what Catholic women are doing kind of in the public sphere these days. They're
Tracy Rowland.
Tracy Rowland, a
great piece on.
Oh yeah, when you said a woman in Australia, that's what I first thought of.
But by the way, who's coming? If you live in New Hampshire, who's going to be speaking at the College of Thomas More in a short while? Tracy Rowland, who had a piece on what we need now, she makes the point. If we all this other stuff is way downstream from human anthropology. If we don't get marriage right, if we don't get the sexes right, why are we even having a conversation about immigration, for example?
Yeah, there's nothing to save. There's no culture if there's not
anthropology, proper anthropology.
Right, and of course this is all part of a conversation that certainly got its its focus, its focal point was the person of John Paul II, with his theology of the body, but also with his whole theology and representation of the Catholic faith in a modern context. But the idea that the body speaks a language, that what we do with our bodies communicates meaning, and that the sexual act has a nuptial meaning. That is, what it means when two people engage in the sexual act is union. And it's a union that is clearly connected to children and to lifelong stability. And having separated that act from its meaning, what we're doing is hurting ourselves, and we're hurting our children. And I think that if I were to take what I took from Patricia Snow's piece, I think you took this too, Chris, based on some of what you said. At root, it's this. The sexual revolution is abuse of young girls and young women.
Yes.
That's what it is. That's what the sexual revolution is.
She calls it soft abuse. She said, like, the popularity of the Me Too movement was focusing on the really extreme cases of, sexual violation. And the popularity of Taylor Swift is focusing on soft abuse, which she says, she defines it as the run-of-the-mill bad behaviors and casual cruelty routinized by the sexual revolution. That once you make this whole aspect of human relationality sort of transactional and unsentimental and shallow and detached from marriage, detached from children, detached from unity, that opens, as she calls it, a Pandora's box. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think as Catholics, we should have probably been better on the Me Too movement and realize, like, even if we're coming from very different places in the critique, we both see this kind of behavior as atrociously wrong. And so even if the person, speaking out about it is someone I agree with on like 5% of things, this is one of those things. And likewise with Taylor Swift's music, whether you love or hate any number of other things, I think we can both agree, yeah, this is really bad. This is something that's really missing.
All of this,
something human.
All of this enabled by the contraceptive pill. And here has been a big failure, I think, on the part of the church, especially in the post-Humanae Vitae time. And I'm not blaming Paul VI. He said what he said, and he said it eloquently and beautifully. And by the way, I think one of the best books Todd Aguilera, who runs our press, ever published in his career here, which I think is about 10 years or 11.
I know.
Also, what's it called? The collection that
Don't
we did on
ask me
contraception.
things on the air.
It'll come to me in a second.
It's the contraception book. But
Indivisible, inseparable.
Inseparable.
It's brilliant, my friends, if you want to understand how contraception is central to this tragedy, that the victims of which are young girls, the biggest victims of modernity. Two other people on your list are our dear friend Rose Sweet is excellent on this, and Jennifer Morse. Jennifer Roback Morse, and Deborah Savage.
And many women, yeah. there are just this, there's this whole, I mean, I would even go like the UN ambassador, the Harvard
Marianne Glendon.
Marianne Glendon is kind of one of the early voices to get it. And I just feel like, we talk about the Catholic intellectual tradition and all that. It's good. It's important. There's so many great things. But when it's alive the way it is alive now among fully mature, brilliant Catholic women, I just feel like we are in a moment, just a special moment of a real contribution. But I come back to my point, Joe. How do we get these women to be heard? They are not confused. You don't read a Patricia Snow and go, just another confused modern person. You go, oh no, she's onto it. She's got it. This is it. How do we get people to not see it as, oh, the church wants you to not have fun in the bedroom? Like this stupid, childish, adolescent response to the Catholic message, but to have a mature engagement with Catholic women.
I think you first, you solicit the desire for something else. Like you can't offer a solution to something someone doesn't realize is a problem. Like if I say I'm in the breath mint business and I'm speaking to a bunch of people who don't realize they have bad breath, you have to find a way into bringing up, oh, some have thought your breath doesn't smell like it should. So likewise, if what you have here is a deep melancholy and sadness around sexuality, that people aren't connecting to the sexual revolution. They're not realizing
Is it that, or they do recognize that their breath is bad, but they continue to chew on garlic or whatever? I mean, I think actually they recognize the problem, or they all feel very sad. I think the saddest people in the world right now are like teenage girls. I think many of them.
I mean, statistically, there's
evidence
a wealth
for that.
of evidence for that.
Yeah, I just think that,
Right.
and
actually even a little younger than teenage girls.
yeah, I don't know, 11, 12 or whatever.
Girls,
By the way,
yeah.
parents, I mean, honestly,
Love those girls.
The devil is very incremental, and the iPhone so your friends can talk, and then they start looking at Instagram, and then the jealousies start and everything, and then they're victims along with Taylor Swift.
And I'm going to say something, I know it's not popular to say it, but their parents get divorced and their father leaves them.
Yes.
Fathers, don't leave your girls.
Yes.
Don't leave your girls.
Yes.
I mean, don't leave your children. But in this world,
Don't leave your spouse.
Don't leave your spouse and tell yourself it's okay. It's better this way. It's not better this way. The best thing is for you to be in the home with her and affirming her beauty especially before God. I think we got to take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about a related tax issue. So we'll move from Taylor Swift to taxes right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN Global Catholic Network is the largest religious media network in the world. 11 global TV channels, English and Spanish radio networks with over 500 AM and FM radio affiliates, one of the largest Catholic websites in the world, dozens of podcasts every week, social media, electronic and print news services, and EWTN Publishing. EWTN is the global Catholic network. For more about EWTN, visit EWTN.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers, author of a whole bunch of great books, including The Eucharist is Really Jesus and a bunch of other declarative sentences. Do you want to give us any of the other declarative sentences, Joe, that you're...
Sure. The early church was the Catholic Church.
Declarative sentence.
Pope Peter, it's not a declarative sentence, but it is kind of a declarative title.
Yeah.
Didn't I title one of those? Didn't I come up with the early church was the Catholic Church?
Did you come up with that? I don't know.
I'm going to take credit.
I'm not keeping score of who comes up with stuff around here.
I'm going to take credit for that one.
I'll tell you what, I think because of, now I'm going to be just very slightly political for a minute, but not about any personalities. I think because of the pro-life issue, a lot of people have associated faithful Catholics with the conservative movement in the United States. I think that's a mistaken identification, but I do think that identification is there. That said...
You have no idea how timely this is. I'm doing an episode on this next week on Shameless Popery.
What? I thought of something that at the same time you thought of it?
Well,
that makes me feel so much better about myself.
Yeah, near proximity.
You guys,
gosh, I must be smart.
You guys should get a friendship bracelet.
Let's get friendship.
Yes.
I actually
What a
don't get the
talisman.
reference to friendship. Is friendship bracelet just a thing?
I think it's a thing that 13-year-old
preteen girls.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the idea. There's a proposal that is going around to increase the child tax credit in the United States. I guess the child tax credit is $2,000 right now. I think it was like $43 when my kids were little. I'm so mad about this.
Actually, no.
No, it was better?
Well, go ahead. Okay, so can I go? Can I go? Can I go?
Yeah, but what
this
did I
is
get
a topic of great interest to me, and
Yes.
and it's because I worked for many years with the author Alan Carlson from Rockford Institute.
Okay.
He was on a presidential commission. You're going to be shocked when I tell you who the president was, who signed the child tax credit into law. Because prior to this president signing it into law, all the child tax credit was for parents who were putting their children in daycare. So you got a tax credit if you put your kid in daycare, but if you were a married mom who stayed home and raised your children as a stay-at-home mom, you were penalized. You couldn't take advantage of the tax credit. And so Alan Carlson, who was on this presidential convention, said, all right, fine, continue to provide the tax credit for people who are putting their children in daycare, but why are you penalizing married couples who are mom is staying home and raise the kids? So it started at $500.
What year was that?
It was in the 90s, 97.
$500.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, good for Bill Clinton, because that's right. He did the right thing. Yeah.
And then under one of the Bushes, I think the first Bush, it came up to about $2,000. So actually, I know when I was raising kids, so I'm a little bit behind you, but not much.
No, not that much.
There was a point where I think after John Paul was born, so number 3, I mean, it might have been as much as 25 at one point or something, but we were so poor, we weren't even paying. We probably were not even paying any taxes.
Yeah.
And one of the things Carlson argued was that in addition to this simply being just, and by the way, he was explicit. He said, and you want to make up the difference? Tax the wealthy who are not having children. Because why? Because in justice, it's going to be those of us who have had children and our children who are going to pay for their Social Security. So they should be taxed now. But he also said, if you look at initiatives like this through history, and he goes back to the 30s, and so they have a pronatalist effect. So
one of the key things that keeps people from having babies is fear of not being able to make it financially.
Yeah. So right now, when we're at 1.6 or something, and that's not even the marital birth rate. If we did marital birth rate, it's got to be below 1 or 1.2 or something. It is way overdue. And by the way, $2,000 is not nearly enough. It ought to be 10. I am not kidding.
Well, that's what this proposal is to make it 5 per child. And I just couldn't be more in favor of that. I don't think there's any argument against it. What's the argument against the child tax credit being big?
Yeah, I don't know.
Darren's got 5 kids in there. He's doing the math. He's like, $25,000. Yeah, okay, that's very good.
I don't know. The capitalists,
that's twice his salary.
The libertarians, the free market guys, they're against this. They're against this thing. They should not be.
Why? Joe? Help me out with this. You know about bad ideas.
I mean, look,
why would someone?
We live in Missouri. It's Missouri's Senator Josh Hawley who proposed this.
Yes.
Oh, then I'm against it. Forget it.
We've got a bunch of kids. Well, we've got 3 kids right now, starter, and so I mean, I think the argument against it would just be, some of the people this helps are middle class or upper class, and it's like,
it's designed to. In fact, it's designed to help them.
Well, wait. If you said there's a $5,000, or even if you said a $10,000 tax credit, do you think that, say, for example, a young woman who was having to make decisions about whether she's even going to continue the pregnancy is going to lean in favor of the child, or because
I don't think it's going to actually make a measurable effect there. I wish it did. But we don't see that in the numbers.
I think it's minimal. Yeah. Okay. But I think it is there.
I think it's actually more likely that people who are deliberating whether to get pregnant in the first place are not going to use NFP or contraception. Once someone is pregnant, tax credits are not usually on the top 20 list of things that they're thinking about. But when you're trying to decide whether to become pregnant in the first place, financially planning for the future definitely does factor into that.
By the way, have the baby in December. Because
we did.
Nathaniel.
The first one is man. Yes. But then the problem is on the other end. They turn 18, but So it all probably works out in the end. It's better to get that tax credit early, though, and that's why I think it should be big and early. Like, the fact is, the very age where we want people to have children, they don't have any money. So shifting the money towards young people who are having children seems to me like a great idea, just a perfect idea. Like,
this is something
where government. The 2021 Napa conference, J.D. Vance talked about how we had this long-standing social conservative union with the free market types, but the major corporations and the libertarians don't really have your best interest at heart.
They do not.
From like a family perspective. No. Now, I think he's maybe walked some of those things back, but he was telling the truth when he said them.
Why do you think that is? Yeah. But look, first of all, some of my best friends are major corporations, so I'm not against major corporations.
We've seen the cups from your best friend on the.
Yeah, right. The Coca-Cola Corporation is my best friend in this world. We hang out together every day, but the part of the argument I think that Josh Hawley makes, I'm not sure if he's one of the ones making this argument, but I know people is that, look, you raise this thing to 5,000, you actually, it's not going to cost you 5,000. It's not going to cost you that extra 3,000 because it actually keeps some children out of poverty programs that otherwise they would be stuck in, and you're paying for all these programs when you could just be giving the money to the mom or to preferably the mom and dad. But you see what I'm saying? In America, I know that in many cases it's a mom.
Right. The citizens of a city pay about $40,000 a year for one homeless person.
Really?
Yeah, I think somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 a year for one homeless person. So actually, if you are encouraging married couple families to have children, and this is a way to do it, you are in fact fighting homelessness. It's true.
Wait, how are you fighting homelessness? I'm confused.
Because a child who grows up in an intact married couple family.
Oh, is less likely to be a homeless child.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I know people don't like the word homeless, and you know what?
Unhoused.
This
which
is what I feel
not
like.
clear to me what the
people
distinction is.
People say to me, "Don't say homeless." I say, don't police my speech. I don't care what you think. It's a perfectly good word. But I'm so sick of people having to think, oh, you know what? That'll solve the problem. I'm not saying homeless anymore. That'll fix it.
How is unhoused?
Oh, thank goodness you were here to clear that up.
How is unhoused different from
How's
homeless?
that better? Homeless isn't, there's nothing derogatory about the word homeless. If you don't have a home, Joe, do you want to correct me on this? I mean,
no,
you're very good with words.
I was just thinking that there's a whole wing of modern activism that is just
linguistic.
Shibboleth is the technical term for it.
That's not how you pronounce that. It's shibboleth.
Exactly. So it's having a word that like the in-group uses that the out-group doesn't know how to use. That makes you feel very special. So, and there's all kinds of practices that are built up along this. And the hallmarks of them are twofold. Number one, you've never heard of this unless you're like really in the cool crowd.
Yeah.
And number two, it never does anything for the marginalized group. It only makes you feel better about how cool you are.
Yeah, right.
So having just defended Taylor Swift in the last hour, I was super annoyed when at one of her concerts, she did a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are this absurd.
Well, that solved the problem. What are you talking about? Now that Taylor Swift did a land acknowledgement, the people who are native to this land are completely healed.
How far back did she have to go?
This is one of the things that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to land acknowledgements, they'll list like 4 different tribes, and you're like, oh, did they all peacefully coexist, or what happened?
What happened there? Why did we have
why isn't it just one tribe you're mentioning? And then you're like, oh,
why is the last tribe always the Aztecs?
Tribe 2, and then eventually
the Mohawks. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The Apaches.
Why are the Navajo never the last tribe mentioned? Yeah, that's I know that's and I. Yeah, I'm sorry. Stop policing people's language. It's you know what we're talking about. And the thing is, if you pay for the child, we don't have to have this debate because we won't need to use that word in terms of the child. And I think this is part of this conversation I wanted to have with the two of you because there's a secondary aspect to this, which is what is the role of government? Because there is an American strain of government that says, if men were angels, there'd be no need for government. That absolute minimum of governance, or even an absence of government, is always to be preferred. That is, first of all,
it's not Catholic teaching.
As Father Hugh pointed out to me, the angels do have a government. Yeah. St. Michael is the prince of the angels. So government is not just for sinners. We all need government. And there is a role for government in some of this stuff.
Is that James Madison?
James Madison said this. It's the dumbest thing he ever said.
It is
No,
dumb.
It's not the dumbest thing he ever said. But he was a very wise man, James Madison. But no, that's not right. But Joe...
He built a really good stadium in New York, right?
You're the... Joe...
Square Garden or something?
Yeah. Is that named after him?
I don't know.
I never thought about that. I love Dolly Madison, though.
That's what I was.
The cakes, though, not the woman. Joe,
the
you're not
is-
going to get involved in this?
The answer is government has a role. They need to be active.
Yeah.
They need to be active and pro-natalist. Yes, they do.
Let's talk about subsidiarity and solidarity. So we want to resolve problems at the most local level possible, but it's not just because of like government efficiency or something like this. It's because of two features. One, you're more likely to get the right fix for the problem at a local level. But two, and even more importantly, it's more intimate. It treats the other person as human. You know, like when you make dinner for your family, this is a more intimate and more human act than, say a national government just sending out packages of dinner in the mail.
Oh,
like
so
you just can't replace that human interaction.
is that what
Now,
subsidiarity means then? That's what you're talking about? That's
yes,
subsidiarity.
that's right.
And then solidarity.
So solidarity is sort of the coming together of people to take care of problems. So let me find the definition that it gives in the
Could you wait
compendium.
just a quick minute? Because I got to...
Yes, I can.
I gotta do the break. Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check is here. He's pronatalist. Joe Heschmeyer is here. He's actively still pronatalist. And I'm here. We're going to talk about more about child tax credits when we come back, and then get into some more stuff too, because we're talking about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. Have you ever wondered about the mysterious, even obscure aspects of the Catholic faith? Dive into the Jimmy Akin podcast, where Jimmy brings together information from many fields as he pushes the boundaries of apologetics. Tune in today to the Jimmy Akin podcast, Mysteries of the Faith, a highly entertaining, informative, and at times humorous show that will help you grow in your faith. Visit JimmyAkinPodcast.com today to subscribe.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers, and now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
All right, well, I guess tax policy is kind of politics, but we're not talking politics. We're talking about policy. Policy, not politics. How's that? Is that a fair distinction?
The
Policy,
role
not
of government.
Yeah, we were talking about solidarity right before the break.
Okay, so
and
go ahead.
just it's this recognition that you're not an individual monad, that we're all in this together, and that how we solve problems should recognize that. Like if your house is on fire, I can't just be like, that's a you problem. Because that's both a failure in Christian charity, but also just like a failure as a society, because eventually that fire is going to spread. Now, maybe that's a literal fire, or maybe it's something else. You know, it's like your family has broken down. That's not just going to impact you. It's going to impact your kids and everyone your kids come in contact with for the next generation. And so once you think about problems in that way, well, then there starts to become much more of a role for the collective to have more involvement, not in a way that contradicts subsidiarity, but that recognizes that we're all connected.
The problem is I think we're getting so connected that it's almost like I think we're afraid of one another. I do think our last election was more of a fear election than a hope election. Our last few elections, I don't just mean the last one, the last few elections, that we're afraid if the other side wins, we can't escape them. There's no I don't know, go out on the Great Plains and have your own thing anymore.
I think I'm having trouble following you here, Cy. I think we're the most scattered and disconnected than ever.
But that we're not, though, in this sense, Chris. Okay. If you say what I said earlier on this program, I don't want children exposed to pornography, then people will respond, well, then don't look at pornography. Or I don't believe in abortion. Well, then don't have an abortion. Yeah. None of that will work because we're so interconnected now. And I'll just give you a very small example that I've used many, many times, but I'll just use it again. My son, 5 years old, learning to read, sitting in the back seat in the minivan, reading the sign on the side of the city bus, doing what a sweet little boy should do, sounding out the words, and it's an ad for the TV show Sex and the City. Okay? So his innocence, I as a parent need other people to defend his innocence. I can't do the whole thing myself. That's what I'm saying, is we're so interconnected in that way.
Yes.
Because of our media, because of our all the tools we have.
Well, we're meant to live this way, connected.
Yes,
human persons are meant to live this way. And by the way, the American founders, their many problems and difficulties notwithstanding, did design a political system, if you will, rooted in, although the word hadn't been coined by that point, the subsidiarity that Joe was describing. And we've talked about that in the show before. It was called
federalism?
It was called federalism and state sovereignty. That saw the nail in the coffin at Appomattox. But that is what the founders had in mind.
Yeah, but obviously slavery was a distorting thing. But if we get far enough away from how badly distorted our society was by slavery, maybe we can have a kind of subsidiarity that's finally just that doesn't even have the recollection of that anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? I think it got a bad association, not even just a bad association because states' rights, for example, was connected with slavery.
Sure. Well, I mean, we don't have states' rights anymore, and we have abortion. So,
well, I don't know about that because now it's up to the states to decide about abortion, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't really think the states operate as sovereign entities in the way that they did prior to the war between the states. In fact, I know they don't.
Oh, no, that's certainly true. That's because the federal government can always just say, we'll do what we want, or we'll take your highway funding away. There's no state that will turn down its highway funding.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, I don't know if Leo XIII read him or not, but there's harmony there.
I'm really surprised the guy that went to law school has nothing to say right now.
I'm taking
Are you bored
it all
with us?
I mean, the states' rights and the abortion rights thing are opposite in one sense, common in another. Both in that the issue that comes in, like women's rights is great. I'm in favor of women's rights. But once women's rights becomes a euphemism for abortion, it's like, well, now we part company. And so likewise, like states' rights are great. But if it becomes a euphemism for slavery, then we part company. And so on those issues, in a good understanding of solidarity and subsidiarity also includes not treating your neighbor like chattel property.
So this conversation can't be held outside the context of scale. And Joe made this point without saying the word scale when he described subsidiarity as executing the business, that's a poor way to put it, discharging the responsibility, whatever it is, at the lowest level of authority. So families, even though the church quite rightly describes them as an imperfect community because they can't provide for all that they need, that which can be managed by the authority of the father stays to the family, and then extended family, clans, things of this nature. There is a point at which this scale becomes too scaled.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's right.
And we're way past that, frankly, in the size of the United States, and frankly, probably in the size of even the independent states.
Well, the thing is, people make fun of California for how poorly we're governed, but we're a state of 40 million people.
Right.
Like, it's too big.
It's too big.
Like, how are you supposed to govern that coherently?
The Archdiocese of Los Angeles is too big.
Oh, well, you don't even get me started about archdioceses. You know how I feel about that.
It's remarkable that the church has followed this trend of,
Big.
of consolidation because it is in fact opposed to her thought.
Are we like old-fashioned small is beautiful people? Is that what we are, Chris?
I'm for human scale.
Yeah, I mean, Italy, just on the diocesan thing, there are 225 dioceses in Italy. And Italy is much smaller than the U.S., and the U.S. only has 196 dioceses. Like, Italy has the second most dioceses of any country outside of Brazil. So there, like the way they're actually living Roman Catholicism near Rome is these really small, kind of city-level dioceses, where the way we're living it is often these large half-a-state kind of dioceses where it's much harder to... Right. Yeah. And so the administration of anything becomes a lot more difficult there. I mean, if you think about every major city in the U.S., they're going to have problems that rural areas and suburbs don't have. And a certain level of mismanagement is just factored in at a certain size and scale because it becomes impossible to administer the city well.
I'm pretty sure it's in Aristotle or the Bible or both. If you can't walk across it in a day or two, it's too big.
That might be in the. Well, that reminds me of Nineveh?
Give me the. Yeah, exactly. Because it took too long to walk across Nineveh. That's why I came.
That's what the problem was. With
exactly. See,
it wasn't all the immorality.
Joe, back me up with the scripture here.
I don't think you can.
You're the apologist.
I think that might be Aristotle.
I think it is Aristotle.
Well, I'll tell you what. I do want to move on to another topic, if I may. Yeah. Is that all right with you guys? I don't want to rush you.
Do you want to do mailbag?
But I'll tell you what. Let's hold mailbag to after the next break. We'll get to mailbag. But I do want to invite people, if you have any comments about this show or anything else on the earth that you would like us to take up as a topic on Flannel Panel, just send an email to flannelpanel@catholic.com. Flannelpanel@catholic.com. It's part of our new segment for Flannel Panel called Mailbag, of which the first instance will happen just moments away.
We should get a bag and have it made out of flannel.
Oh, Chris, this is why he's the boss.
Yes.
This is why he's who could have thought of that? Just made it what?
It's a mailbag.
Yeah,
not a flannel bag.
It should be, but you can have
It's a Flannel Panel mailbag. I feel like we're discussing this for too long. I do want to get on to a serious topic. We talked last time about Nicaragua and the evil communist dictators in Nicaragua and the evil, evil, evil behavior towards the Catholic Church down there. Please, when you pray your rosary each night, include in your intentions the Catholics, all the people of Nicaragua, but certainly the Catholic bishops, sisters, priests of Nicaragua. But I want to talk for a minute about China, because we've been told for quite a while, you know what? Those Chinese communists, they may be bad, but Christianity, it keeps growing in China. Well, a new report says Christianity is not growing in China. I think the Chinese dictators are doing a pretty good job of oppressing religion, and it can be done effectively. I think one of the things that we think, this romantic notion we have is, oh, don't worry, it'll flourish. No, it won't. I mean, you could take a look at, I don't know, Tito or Stalin or
Mexico,
North Africa.
Mexico. North Africa. You can oppress religion to the point where people start to lose their religion.
And some places never come back, North Africa. There's some things don't come back.
Right, North Africa, it's been more than 1,000 years. Well, I mean, it's still religious, but...
it's not Christian.
No, it's certainly not Christian. Although we do love our Coptic brothers and sisters, especially in Egypt. But so measuring religion in China is a new report that came out. It says Chinese Christianity stopped growing in 2010. And we've seen, the Chinese communists taking steeples off of churches, putting people in jail, disappearing ministers of religions, abusing Catholic ministers, certainly. I know there's a great deal of controversy on what the Vatican's arrangements with the Chinese communists, but I have to plead I don't know on that, because I don't understand Chinese politics at all.
I mean, a lot of the arrangements are secretive.
Yeah, and that's right. I don't feel fully informed on that. But what do you guys say to this idea that, you know what, the communists are winning? They're not losing.
It's hard to say. I mean, one of the problems is we don't have any idea how many Christians are in China. It went from 2% of the population being identified as Christian to 1%, which is bad. But when we're dealing with numbers that small in a place where you can't really openly profess the religion, it is very difficult to know how many people we're talking about here.
Yeah, and everything's on the sly. 1,000,000 years ago, I went to a UN conference on women in Beijing. This is way before I worked for Catholic Answers. And one of the most edifying experiences was a little coalition of people that formed in defense of life at this UN conference. And two people in particular, a very, very young couple, brand new marriage or infant child, were living in Harbin, which is a city in the northern part of China, on the sly, training people in natural family planning.
Really?
And this was their this is the way they were evangelizing and spreading the gospel.
God bless them.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's as Joe says. I'm sure there's a lot of continues today, a good bit of underground evangelization. But I think you said the most important thing here, Si, and that is it's naive to think that governments can't
do real
stamp
harm.
things out.
Real,
Yes.
genuine
Yep.
harm.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's something for other governments to address. I'm very skeptical of the idea that other governments can intervene. But
I think they easily can.
You think so?
What would be the case against? I mean, it could be as simple as if you continue to do these practices against Christians or even like Uyghur Muslims, we're not going to work with you on this other problem you're interested in working on. We're not going to give you the
that's a good
beneficial
point.
trade deals.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to like send troops to be, like China is incredibly reliant upon exports for its economy. And like on things we care about, we will stand up and make threats. If we haven't done that here, I think the most likely reason is because we don't care about it enough.
No,
Yeah.
we don't care about it.
I mean, just earlier in the week, we heard about sanctions on Colombia because they wouldn't take their citizens back. How about sanctions on Nicaragua? And look, I'm not really necessarily a big fan of sanctions. I think there's moral problems with them. But how about the threat of sanctions on Nicaragua for the persecution of the church?
But I don't know this. I have to say I don't know the situation of.
Maybe there already are.
Like
Yeah,
I would think there might be sanctions on Nicaragua from like 1983 that are still in place.
Yes.
I don't know. Like we're still sanctioning Cuba, and what more can you do? But I mean, it would be nice to hear the president or the vice president say something about Nicaragua. I mean, just say something about it. Just point it out.
This is something I would expect J.D. Vance to have said something about now.
I mean, why shouldn't the president say something about it? Why shouldn't he say something about it? Well, anyway, let's take a quick break. We'll do mailbag when we come back. A new feature here on Flannel Panel. Flannel Panel mailbag with Chris Check reading the mail right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I'm continually amazed and humbled at the way God can work through me to help so many people. Although I have no idea what the caller's questions will be that day, I trust that the Holy Spirit can use my education and experience to guide, challenge, or comfort those who call.
Mast Appeal with Colleen Kelly Mast. Saturday morning, 9 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's time for mailbag, but it looked to me like Joe Heschmeyer wanted to say something before we do mailbag.
Yeah,
Did you have something to say, Joe Heschmeyer?
I did. So the data you were referring to earlier about the fact that the Christian population in China may have stopped growing, after the rapid growth in the 80s and 90s. That's from Pew Research Center. And I think the important thing there is the may, because including some of the research they cite to in their own piece, they acknowledge that there's some stuff even from like Chinese researchers that would point to Christianity continuing to quietly grow. If you look at the sociological trends for the Roman Empire in the first 300 years of Christianity grew at roughly, these are Rodney Stark's numbers, roughly 40% per decade. So if you have 100 Christians, then 10 years later you have 140. And if you can keep that rate of growth going over time, in the first couple generations, it looks completely hopeless. But as you keep going, it's like compounding interest, where literally by the 300s, you're in the tens of millions and hundreds of millions of Christians. And so China, when we're talking about 1 or 2% of the population, maybe 3%, that's out of a billion. And so that's still huge numbers of people coming to Christ. So it's easy to kind of despair at the size of the problem. But I think there are real signs for hope and real reasons to continue to take China very seriously as a mission field.
Well said, Joe. Is Rodney Stark still with us? Did he?
I believe he died a couple of years ago.
He is a brilliant demographer. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, he died in 2022.
Absolutely first-rate mind. Excellent book about the Crusades, by the way.
And you know what? All of Asia, there are massive evangelization opportunities, and there are people who are taking advantage of those opportunities. Maybe Catholics should remember when missionaries ask for your support, and they're in India or China or Japan or Vietnam or the Asian. I don't have to list all the Asian countries. You know them, but
Cambodia.
We're not going to list all of them.
Thailand.
Consider it's an opportunity to always supporting the missionaries is an opportunity to do what Christ has commanded us to do: go and make disciples of all the nations. Let's do the mailbag, Chris.
And consider that they are over there at great personal cost. And all I want you to do is evangelize the lady at the checkout aisle at the grocery store.
All right, I'll do my best.
Yep. Mailbag.
Mailbag. Can we have the mailbag music, please? They're clearly not ready with mailbag music. That's the mailbag music. All right.
This is from Denise in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Thank you for your letter, Denise.
Dear Mr. Check, I am a fan, a supporter. Oh, I like her.
I like Denise.
And a faithful listener of Catholic Answers Live. I never miss an episode. My favorite is the Flannel Panel. That's where it ends.
I like Denise now too.
That's where it ends. Yeah. No.
If only it had ended there, Denise.
I listened to the last episode of the Flannel Panel, and that is the reason for my letter. There are two topics I must address. First is dogs and strollers. Let me introduce you to my 17-year-old dachshund Bunny, photo number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Bunny is deaf and partially paralyzed. Without her stroller, she would not have a chance to venture out for a change of scenery. She loves getting in her stroller and walking to our church, and especially likes it when Father Phil is on his patio so we can stop and say hello. On the way home, we stop at Maria's, the ice cream stand on the corner, where she gets a special treat. You should not be giving your dog ice cream.
The dog is blind and paralyzed. Give it ice cream.
Pancreatitis. Pancreatitis. Denise. Without her stroller, Bunny would be a sad little weenie dog. Please reconsider your stand on dog strollers. I will not reconsider, Denise, but
What was our stand on? Did we take a strong stand on dog strollers?
Yes.
As did 83% of our listeners.
Yeah, we said they're horrible.
No more dogs and strollers.
Denise, for you and for Bunny, photo number 1, an exception. You make
no.
What?
Absolutely. You're on an island on this one.
What?
Dogs don't belong in strollers. I'll even go further.
Oh, careful what you say.
If you're going to say something,
stop.
I am scared what he's going to say right now.
Get the dump button
We're
ready.
not.
Stop. I'm going on. I am going on. Denise is my friend Joe, and you're about to make it.
Boy, that was about to turn really bad.
Second is Taylor Swift. I 100% agree with you about her music, exhibitionist tendencies, etc. I am not a Swiftie. I don't buy or listen to her music. However, let me introduce you to my great nephew, Ethan, photo number 2.
Wait, that was the dog again.
No.
That's Ethan. Okay, sorry. I thought we were still looking at the
hold
dog.
up, Ethan.
Wow.
Okay.
No.
Photo
You were
number
worried
2.
about me saying
that's a
something.
sweet picture.
Ethan, photo number 2. Ethan is 17-year-old and battling cancer. He receives treatment at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City.
Kansas City.
A couple weeks ago, Taylor Swift spent over an hour at the hospital visiting sick children, including my great-nephew. Everything considered, you have to give Miss Swift kudos for her humanitarian efforts. She certainly made these young today. Go to it, Miss Swift.
Yes. All right. So
Yes.
are we?
I remember when this happened where Taylor Swift went to Children's Mercy. And as someone who was treated at Children's Mercy when I was a child, and they saved my life, they do a lot of great work. And I was very glad she did this. And I know a lot of people who don't love Taylor Swift and were very happy that she was making kids.
I don't think we were
extremely
saying we
happy
didn't
there, so.
love Taylor Swift.
And by the way, I saw...
Oh, I'm saying I know like people online,
Yeah.
Facebook friends and everything. This caused quite a stir when it happened.
I remain a fan and hold no adverse opinions. It's just that these two topics hit so close to my heart, I had to voice my opinion. Hello to the rest of the panel, Cy.
Hello.
And Joe.
Hello, Denise.
And everyone at Catholic Answers Live. I look forward to the next Flannel panel, and I promise not to be so touchy. I like the way she signs it. To him, through her. Denise.
Oh, beautiful. Denise, I'll tell you what, that
Denise,
letter was
we're
so
gonna
good,
send you
Denise.
a prize.
Yes, we are going to send you a prize, Denise. And also, because that letter was as good as it was, we started a new feature called Mailbag, Flannel Panel Mailbag. So that's all because of you, Denise.
She's the foundress of...
You are now, you can now identify yourself as foundress
of Flannel Panel Mailbag.
Flannel Panel Mailbag. I do think we were better to Taylor Swift this time than we were last time.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us has any interest in dogs and strollers, though. I don't. Also, dogs in restaurants got really low marks.
And I'm against
really
dogs eating
Well,
ice
that's because
cream.
they're bad cooks.
Do not give your dog ice cream.
I tell you what,
If they have cancer,
there's a certain point at which you can just give the dog ice cream.
High fat is not good for dogs. Pancreatitis.
But Denise, thanks very much for the letter. And if anyone else would like to send us a letter, a note, a comment.
I'm glad we're wrapping up on a hopeful note.
I know, and what a nice note from such a nice person. And it's a beautiful thing. Taylor Swift, okay, you got all the fame, you got all the money, you went to Children's Hospital. Good. That's what it's for, and good for her, and good for her. And I know there's also this thing where you can kind of depersonalize celebrities, where you treat them as an idea rather than as a person. And they're all people, except for Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're all people. And I'm sorry, even Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back.
I saw a movie about that.
He's several people.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
People in the comments, both on Facebook and on YouTube, had very strong thoughts about ice cream for dogs in opposite directions. There was the "Don't give ice cream to dogs" camp, "Give ice cream to dogs who have other illnesses" camp. And one group that says they make ice cream for dogs. So
there is an occasion when you want to give ice cream to a dog.
When they're going over the Rainbow Bridge?
No.
Oh.
No, it is when you have a female who is in whelp, who is delivering babies.
Oh yeah, female in whelp.
Can we put a content advisory on this episode?
Because
you said a female in whelp right on the air.
That the dairy or whatever stimulates the contractions.
Really?
Yep.
All right.
We give vanilla ice cream to our spaniels when they are whelping litters.
Well, I don't. Is Bunny a boy or a girl? I don't know if we found.
It
Oh no, it's a
better
girl.
not be a
It's a girl.
boy.
Yeah, it's a girl.
I was stunned when I found out the musical artist Bad Bunny is a boy. Isn't that right?
Well, there's a musical artist named Nelly that's a boy. Isn't Nelly a girl's name? He played.
Yeah,
He played at the inauguration.
This is now the dumbest conversation.
He played at the
This is now the
By the way,
dumbest conversation.
I mean, I got to say, his music is not good. It's not morally good
Nelly?
music. Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, yeah.
It's morally bad. There's a lot to be hopeful out there, my friends.
All right, so what are you hopeful about? Give us one hopeful thing before we go, Chris, and then you give us one hopeful thing, Joe.
I'm filled with hope because I know that the staff of Catholic Answers are conduits of knowledge, but we're also conduits of grace because we cooperate with the Holy Spirit to bring the fullness of the truth to countless people that we're going to meet one day.
That's beautiful. Joe,
But it's
you wanna
true.
go?
Wait, it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
It's
it
true.
is. I don't know, but I liked it.
Yeah, related to what I said before with the growth in China, the spiritual multiplication is a thing. So you don't have to change the whole world, just change a few people and help bring them to Christ, and also give them the tools to bring others to Christ, and the effect multiplies in a way that's almost unimaginable.
We're here to help.
I have to say, my main hope is all these Catholic young people I've met in the last month. God has blessed me with this opportunity to meet Catholics in their 20s, 30s, teens, and there's a lot of them very smart, very much on fire, just good people. And there's more than 12 of them. And so that means that bodes very, very well for the future. I also have a great deal of hope because well over 80% of our listeners do not want dogs in restaurants, which means there is still sanity in this world. Joe Heschmeyer, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
Check out Joe's podcast, Shameless Popery. He is a shameless papist and a really good podcaster. Shameless Popery at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Chris Check, 10 years, standing ovation. Yay, bravo, bravo. Chris
God
Check.
reward you, Si.
That'll do it for us. We'll see you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.